The new batch 1934 World Cup Sweden. Sweden were one of 10 nations to make their debut at the 1934 World Cup in Italy, most of those nations being from Europe, with the success of the first World Cup in 1930 in Uruguay, and with this World Cup in 1934 being in Europe, in Italy. More nations was interested in competing in this tournament. But with more nations being interested, this World Cup will be the very first World Cup where nations would have to qualify first to then compete at the proper tournament. Sweden were in the very first group, Group 1, with Estonia and Lithuania. In this group, only one nation could qualify for the World Cup in 1934. Each team would have to play one game away and one at home. Sweden and Estonia would be the very first World Cup qualifying match, which took place on the 11th of June 1933. In Sweden, in Stockholm Olympic Stadium, this is where the 1912 Olympic Games took place. Currently, Djurgårdens, a women's team, play their home games there. Sweden beat Estonia 6-2. Four of those goals coming in the first half. Knut Krohn for Sweden in the 7th minute became the very first player to ever score a World Cup qualifying goal. Lennart Bunk, as well as his brother Torsten Bunk, also both scored in that game, becoming the first brothers to score goals at a World Cup game. In the qualifiers, Carl Eriksson also scored 2 goals for Sweden in both halves, becoming the first player to score 2 goals in a World Cup qualifying game. And Sven Andersson also scoring a penalty, which would be the first penalty scored in a World Cup qualifying match as well. Estonia did score 2 goals themselves in the second half, which did half Sweden's lead for a bit. Leonard Kass and Richard Kilmar scored for Estonia. Again, nothing more than consolations. Sweden overwhelmingly strong in this match. They would then go on to play Lithuania on the 29th of June, beating them 2-0. Another Knut scoring for Sweden, this time Knut Hansen. 2 goals in the second half, the 55th and the 65th minute, would take Sweden to their very first World Cup. Sweden would join other founding members of FIFA making their World Cup debut, such as Spain, Switzerland and the Netherlands, as well as returning FIFA members, FIFA founding members to be exact, such as France and Belgium. Sweden were one of the unseeded teams, and they were drawn up against the finalists of the 1930 World Cup, Argentina. I should mention this though, Argentina had not one player from their 1930 team join the 1934 squad, and also a change of manager as well. The game between Sweden and Argentina took place the same time as all the other matches in the round of 16 at the 1934 World Cup. They played in the Stadio Littorielli in Bologna, which is now known as the Stadio Renato di Larara, which is the home stadium of Bologna FC, who have been there since 1927. The first goal of the 1934 World Cup was scored in this match. Argentina were the ones who started this match off well. 4 minutes in, Ernesto Belize took the lead for Argentina. 5 minutes later, though, Sven Jonasson became Sweden's very first goal scorer at the World Cup. And that's how the first half ended 1-1, but the second half, early again into the second half, Alberto Galatello made it 2-1 for Argentina. Argentina back in the lead. But Sven Jonasson again scored in the 67th minute, this time equalising once again for Sweden, 2-2, and again makes him the first player in Sweden's history to score 2 goals at a World Cup. and that's in their first game. And then Knut Krohn, the first man to ever score a goal at a World Cup qualifying match, scores the winner for Sweden, knocking out the runners up of the 1930 World Cup, Argentina. This would be the big shock result, I would say, in the 1934 World Cup. Regardless that there's a massive change of players, the whole team, and a new coach, Argentina was still a seeded team and Sweden wasn't. So massive win for Sweden, knocking out again the runners up of the 1930 World Cup. Sweden and Argentina would come up against each other only one other time. This would be in 2002 in South Korea and Japan, where they were in the same group as England and Nigeria. Their game ended up in a 1-1 draw, which would knock Argentina out of that World Cup. All right, so Sweden do move on to the quarterfinals. Their first quarterfinal ever. They take on Germany next, another nation also making their debut at the World Cup. This match took place in a San Siro, where both AC Milan and Inter Milan play their home games at. Just like the round of 16, all of the quarterfinal matches were played at the same time. The first half was goalless between Germany and Sweden, but there were goals in the second half. Germany scored 2. Karl Humann scored in the 60th and then 63rd minute, giving Germany the lead 2-0. Gustav Donker did get a goal back in the 82nd minute for Sweden, but it wasn't enough. They couldn't score again, and Sweden was knocked out of their very first World Cup by Germany. Regardless, still a good showing for Sweden at this World Cup in 1934. And this would start a bit of history between Sweden and Germany at the World Cup. They do meet each other again 4 other times, with the Germans getting the best of Sweden most of those times. Sweden only ever beat Germany once, and that is in 1958, where Germany was, at the time, the reigning champions after winning in 1954. Sweden were the hosts of the 1958 World Cup, knocked out Germany in the semi-finals 3-1. Germany will end up finishing as the third place team competing at the very first World Cup playoff match, or third place playoff match. I did mention something about Sweden earlier. In 1958, they do host the World Cup themselves. And at the next 2 World Cups, at least after 1934, in 1938, they reached the semi-finals. And in 1950, they reached the final 4 as well, 2 4-place finishes for them. And they actually do become the first host nation to reach a final of a World Cup and lose. The 1950 decisive game between Brazil and Uruguay was actually not a final. Sweden do have a really good history. They definitely have been unlucky themselves. Bumping into both Brazil and Germany many times has definitely been unlucky for them over the years. Sweden's group currently hasn't started their World Cup matches yet, but they happen to be in the same group as Switzerland, who are the 1954 World Cup hosts. They also joined Slovenia and Kosovo. That group definitely looks like it'd be a battle between the 1954 and 1958 hosts, Switzerland and Sweden. Okay, this was my new batch Sweden 1934 World Cup video. Thanks for watching and listening as usual. Appreciate it. Please like, comment, and subscribe. Thanks again, and bye.